I used to believe I was in control of my life. That if something went wrong, it would be because I allowed it, carefully, deliberately, with rules I could bend without breaking. I told myself that for a long time. Long enough to believe it. From the outside, everything looked settled. A committed relationship, a shared routine, familiar conversations that repeated themselves like a loop I no longer paid attention to. There was nothing dramatically wrong, and that was the problem. Silence had replaced curiosity. Presence had replaced connection. I felt invisible even when I wasn't alone. Tony, my brother, was the opposite of me in many ways. He believed in boundaries, in doing the right thing even when no one was watching. He was the kind of person who looked you in the eye when you spoke and remembered details you forgot you'd shared. Growing up, he was always the one who stepped in when things got messy. I admired that about him. I also knew, deep down, that if he ever saw me clearly, he wouldn't like what he saw. The first crack didn't come from attraction. It came from conversation. Someone listened. Someone noticed when my voice changed, when my messages came late at night, when I admitted I wasn't as happy as I pretended to be. I told myself it was harmless. Just words. Just understanding. I wasn't touching anyone. I wasn't crossing any real lines. That's how it always starts. With permission you give yourself quietly. The attention felt like oxygen. I hadn't realized how much I was suffocating until I could finally breathe. Compliments landed differently when they came from someone who wasn't obligated to care. Questions felt intimate. Shared laughter felt dangerous. Every interaction carried a low hum of excitement that followed me through the day. I began hiding small things. Clearing message histories. Turning my phone face down. Smiling at texts I shouldn't have been receiving. The guilt came in waves, but I learned how to drown it out. I reminded myself of everything I wasn't getting. I built a narrative where I was the victim of neglect instead of the architect of betrayal. Tony noticed the changes before anyone else. He always did. He asked if I was okay more than once. Not casually, seriously. I brushed him off, joked about stress, blamed work, blamed exhaustion. He didn't push, but his silence after those conversations lingered longer than his words. There were moments I almost stopped. Almost pulled back. Late at night, staring at the ceiling, I'd feel the weight of what I was risking. A relationship, a family, my own self-respect. I promised myself it wouldn't go further. That I'd end it before it crossed a point of no return. But emotional lines blur quickly when you pretend they don't exist. Soon, the messages weren't enough. The pauses between seeing each other felt unbearable. When plans were made, my heart raced with a mix of anticipation and fear. I justified everything in advance. I wasn't planning to ruin anything. I just wanted to feel something again. Just once more before reality pulled me back. I became skilled at lying without speaking. At rearranging schedules. At choosing words carefully. The person I lived with trusted me. That trust made the guilt sharper, but it also made the deception easier. When someone believes in you completely, they don't look too closely. There was a moment, clear and quiet, when I knew I was already too far in. I caught my reflection in a dark window, phone glowing in my hand, smiling at something that shouldn't have existed. I didn't recognize myself. Instead of stopping, I looked away. Tony was around more often during that time. Family obligations, shared spaces, casual drop-ins that suddenly felt threatening. I started timing my actions, calculating risks, convincing myself I was careful enough. That nothing would collide if I planned well. I didn't consider how fragile secrets really are. How they don't need intention to be exposed, only timing. I told myself one last lie before everything unraveled, that I could keep the worlds separate. That my brother would never see this version of me. That some truths stay hidden if you want them to badly enough. I was wrong. The day it happened didn't feel dangerous at first. That's what scares me most when I think back on it. There were no warning signs screaming at me to stop. Just a quiet confidence that I had timed everything right. The house wasn't supposed to have anyone else in it. The messages had been cautious. The door was locked. Every excuse was rehearsed before it was needed. I remember thinking how ordinary the air felt. How normal it all seemed, like I hadn't built my entire life on a fragile lie. My heart was beating fast, but not from fear. From anticipation. From the illusion that this moment belonged to me and no one else. I didn't hear Tony arrive at first. There was a sound, soft, distant, that didn't register immediately. A door. Footsteps. I ignored it, convinced my mind was playing tricks on me. When you're doing something you shouldn't, your brain becomes your biggest accomplice. It explains away the danger before you can question it. Then I heard my name. Not loud, not angry, just confused. Everything inside me dropped at once. Heat rushed to my face. My chest tightened so fast it felt like my lungs forgot how to work. Time didn't slow down the way people say it does. It collapsed. 1 second I was somewhere I didn't belong, the next I was staring at the one person who should never have seen me like that. Tony stood there, frozen, his expression unreadable at first. Shock hit him before anger did. His eyes moved, taking in details I wished I could erase. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even look away. The silence stretched, thick and humiliating, pressing down on me from all sides. I don't remember what I tried to say. If I tried at all. Any words that formed in my head died before they reached my mouth. There was nothing that could make the moment better. No explanation that wouldn't sound like an insult to his intelligence. His face changed slowly. Disbelief hardened into something heavier. Disappointment. Not just in what he saw, but in who I was. That hurt more than if he had yelled. More than if he had cursed or stormed out. I felt exposed in a way I never had before. This wasn't being caught by a stranger. This was my brother. The person who shared my childhood, my history, my family. The person whose opinion I cared about more than I ever admitted. He finally spoke my name again, quieter this time, like he was testing whether it still belonged to me. Then he turned away. No dramatic exit. No confrontation. Just a pause at the doorway, long enough for me to feel the full weight of what I'd done, and then he was gone. The door closing sounded louder than anything else in the room. The person I was with didn't say much either. Fear had replaced whatever confidence existed before. Eyes avoided mine. Distance appeared instantly, as if being near me now carried risk. I couldn't blame them. The fantasy shattered the second reality stepped in. My hands were shaking. I couldn't stop them. My thoughts raced ahead, imagining everything that could happen next. Tony telling the truth. Tony staying silent but never looking at me the same way again. Tony choosing loyalty to family over loyalty to blood. I realized then how small the affair really was compared to the damage it had caused. How temporary the excitement had been. How permanent the consequences felt. I left soon after, barely aware of how I got out. The drive felt unreal, like I was watching someone else make my mistakes from a distance. Every red light felt like judgment. Every passing car felt like someone who knew. My phone buzzed once. A message I didn't open. I already knew what it would say. Fear, regret, distance. The same emotions twisting inside me. What haunted me most wasn't the possibility of being exposed. It was the certainty that someone I loved had seen me clearly, without excuses, without the version of myself I carefully presented to the world. Tony didn't catch me in a misunderstanding. He caught me in the truth. By the time I got home, the silence felt hostile. The walls seemed to know what I'd done. I replayed his expression over and over again, searching for any sign of forgiveness. There was none, just shock turning into something final. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. No matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same. The secret wasn't mine anymore. It was sitting with my brother, heavy and unresolved, waiting to decide who it would destroy next. Tony didn't call me that night. He didn't text. That silence was worse than any confrontation I had imagined. I kept my phone close, jumping every time it lit up, bracing myself for words that never came. When morning arrived, it didn't bring relief. It brought dread. I knew this wasn't over. It was only settling in. When we finally spoke, it wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No accusations thrown like weapons. That somehow made it harder. He asked one question, calmly, as if he already knew the answer and just needed to hear me say it. I lied. Not completely, but enough to insult both of us. I could see it in his eyes the moment I did. The lie landed and stayed there, heavy and obvious. He didn't argue. He didn't press. He just looked tired. Tired in a way that told me he was carrying more than just anger. He was carrying disappointment, confusion, and the weight of deciding what to do next. I wanted him to yell. I wanted something I could react to. His restraint felt like judgment without end. After that, everything fractured quietly. Family interactions felt staged, like we were all playing roles we hadn't rehearsed for. Tony was present but distant. Polite but cold. He didn't expose me, but he didn't protect me either. The uncertainty gnawed at me. I didn't know which was worse, being found out or being left alone with the possibility of it. The relationship I was supposed to be committed to started showing cracks I could no longer ignore. Questions became more frequent. Pauses in conversation grew longer. Trust, once effortless, now felt fragile. I could sense suspicion forming, not because of evidence, but because guilt changes how you move, how you speak, how you look at someone who believes in you. The affair stopped feeling like an escape. Messages became shorter. Responses came later. What once felt urgent now felt risky. The person who had offered comfort began pulling back, afraid of consequences they hadn't considered until Tony walked in. I couldn't blame them. I was afraid too. Afraid of losing everything, afraid of admitting I already had. At night, I replayed the choices that led me here. I tried to pinpoint the moment I could have stopped. There were dozens. I ignored all of them. I told myself I was lonely. I told myself I deserved happiness. I never told myself the truth, that I was avoiding difficult conversations by creating a bigger problem. Tony confronted me again, days later. This time, his voice wasn't calm. It wasn't loud either. It was controlled, edged with something sharp. He asked me if I understood what I had done. Not just to the relationship, but to him. To the family. To myself. I opened my mouth and closed it again. Understanding felt too late to matter. He told me he was torn. That he hated being in this position. That loyalty wasn't as simple as people like to pretend. Hearing that broke something in me. I had forced my brother into a moral war he never asked for. Protect me and betray his values, or expose me and tear the family apart. I started isolating myself. Friends noticed I was quieter, less present. I avoided eye contact. Every interaction felt like it might be the one where the truth surfaced. The fear changed me. I became someone smaller, cautious, constantly calculating the cost of every word. The person I lived with looked at me differently now. Not with certainty, but with doubt. That doubt hurt more than anger would have. It meant the foundation was already cracking. I considered confessing more than once. Each time, fear stopped me. I waited, hoping time would soften the damage, knowing deep down it wouldn't. Tony stopped asking questions. That scared me most of all. Silence had become his decision-making space. I didn't know what he would choose, only that whatever he chose would be permanent. I began to understand that infidelity doesn't just break trust. It poisons relationships you never intended to touch. The affair, once intoxicating, now felt empty. When it finally ended, there were no promises, no dramatic goodbyes. Just a quiet understanding that it couldn't survive reality. I was left alone with my choices, my fear, and a brother who no longer looked at me the same way. Nothing had exploded yet, but everything was damaged. I could feel the consequences circling, patient and inevitable, waiting for the moment they would finally land. The days that followed felt like walking on glass. Every word I spoke, every movement I made, carried the weight of what Tony had seen. He didn't confront me again immediately, and that was the worst part. The absence of words spoke louder than any argument could have. It was a quiet reckoning, and I was the one left to endure it alone. I tried to imagine what he was thinking, replaying his expression, the pause before he left, the way he didn't shout, the way his disappointment hit harder than anger ever could. I couldn't sleep without imagining scenarios that might follow. Would he tell someone? Would he reveal everything to my partner? Would the rest of the family sense the fracture even if he stayed silent? Every mundane sound made me flinch, every unexpected knock made my stomach drop. I realized that secrecy doesn't protect you, it traps you. The more you try to contain it, the more it gnaws at every corner of your mind. The person I had been involved with withdrew almost immediately. They had no loyalty left for an affair that could no longer be kept hidden. Their absence left an echo, a reminder of the thrill I once felt and the cost I now carried. It was empty, hollow, a ghost of desire with no warmth, no satisfaction, only consequences. That emptiness followed me into the relationship I was supposed to be committed to, where trust had already begun to erode. I considered confessing fully to my partner, but fear of the unknown stopped me. Would honesty rebuild what I had broken or shatter it irreparably? I realized that some truths, once revealed, don't offer redemption. They only demand reckoning. I sat with that thought, knowing that every choice from this point would either prolong the agony or accelerate the collapse. Tony didn't speak much, but when he did, it was concise, deliberate. His words weren't laced with rage, they were laced with disappointment and finality. You didn't just betray them. You betrayed yourself. Those words haunted me more than anything else. They weren't easy to dismiss because they cut straight to the core of my identity, my decisions, the person I thought I was. There was no excuse for self-betrayal. No justification strong enough to soften the impact. I began living cautiously, measuring each glance, each message, each interaction. The atmosphere at home was fragile, every moment carrying a sense of impending judgment. Even the smallest action felt scrutinized. I realized that Tony's silence and restraint were not forgiveness, they were observation, a way of letting me live with the consequences without interference, leaving the judgment to settle naturally. The relationship I had been hiding from grew colder. Suspicion replaced intimacy, distance replaced connection. I watched the cracks spread, knowing they were my doing. The affair was over, but its echoes remained, persistent, unrelenting, impossible to ignore. I could no longer pretend that life could return to the way it was before, because some actions change everything permanently. I tried to imagine the future, but every vision was uncertain. Tony's presence lingered in my mind, a reminder that some lines, once crossed, cannot be erased. Some secrets are no longer yours alone, they live in the eyes of those who witnessed them, and they shape the way everyone moves forward. I realized the truth, there is no undoing the damage, only learning to live with the weight of it, day by day, with the knowledge that what was once hidden can never be unseen. In the end, I was left with the silence, the guilt, the fractured trust, and the constant awareness that every choice from now on carried the memory of that moment. The world hadn't exploded in flames, but the quiet destruction had already begun. Nothing would ever be the same again, and the uncertainty of what Tony would do next made every day feel like a test I was destined to fail. The secret had left its mark, permanent and unavoidable, and I was left to navigate the ruins alone.